So I am joined by Emily Burkhead. Emily is an amazing intermedia artist and filmmaker. I first met you. I hadn't met you yet, but I first met your art at the Ugly Art Co. Gallery. We're both part of the Ugly Art Co. collective. And I was so amazed and impressed by like the searing pink, the hot pink, which is one of my favorite colors. I'm very connected to that color. And it really connected to my inner femininity and this childhood sense of wonder. And I just had to have you on the show and talk to you about your creative process. So thanks for coming.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
No problem. So one thing that stood out to me was your thesis, your Trigger Glimmer something else thesis. It's a mixture of 3D printing, found material, and surrealist video. What was the idea behind that? How did that come about?
Yeah, so that was definitely sort of long, I'd say painful process. Because I was pretty lost in grad school. Because I don't know if you saw this. I don't have a BFA. Like I have a social science degree in undergrad. So I went to my MFA without much artistic training at all. So when I was formulating the thesis, at this point I was really intrigued by a lot of materials that I was seeing, even though I was from a film background. I can't paint. I'm not a painter, but I would go to thrift stores and see just like, all these weird things. Lansing, Michigan has an amazing thrifting scene.
Really?
Yes. Yes. It's like right at the perfect point where there's enough of it and there's like no consignment stores. So you can get whatever you want, and it's
weird
not
stuff.
And it's not upmarked or anything, upcharged. So anyway, at some point I found a 3D printing pen at Goodwill, and one of the ones for kids, like very crappy, for lack of a better term. And I sort of mixed that with some filament I already had. The sort of translucent hot pink filament with translucent hot pink marine vinyl, and then something sort of clicked. And so I sort of used those materials as a form of expression and just continued to play around with them and allowed it to grow and develop. Yeah.
And I was reading more about that project, and a lot of it was about you connecting with your queer and neurodivergent childhood, which also I really resonated with that because being both of those.
Yeah.
What made you want to express that?
Well, yeah. Feelings of difference. And even just while I was formulating, using those materials, using the hot pink, the feedback, the critique I would get was why pink and why this material, but people don't ask that of painters, And it was a valid question to an extent because I didn't quite know what it meant yet, but I realized it was a dopamine inducer. The pink felt forbidden in a way because it feels, or I've been told or socialized to believe that it's childish, it's trashy, it's garish.
All three of my favorite things.
Right. Yeah. Right. And that's very queer. Like it's very queer. And so I realized I had to lean into it and I had to explore it further. And I had to figure out, okay, why do I love this pink? Even though I don't wear, like, that's not my fashion sense, which is people will talk to me about that all the time. Like, you don't dress like that. And it's like, no, I don't. But I needed to figure out why I was so attracted to it. And it was because of that. It was because of feeling weird and feeling different and allowing myself to go back into my childhood,
Mm-hmm.
and sort of reclaim some of those materials that maybe were too feminine, or maybe I didn't appreciate them at the time, or things like that, where I just felt othered. And this is a way to kind of put those materials and those textures and those colors into a different context.
Yeah, I love that. And especially, Trigger and Glimmer is in the title, that's surrounding neurodivergence. How does neurodivergence strengthen your work, and how might it hinder it, if so?
Oh, yeah. So, just to say for those at home, the title comes from the things in the work that are yellow usually, and kind of like, I would say more traditionally boyish colors are my sensory triggers. And so I have written phrases like wet socks and contemporary Christian music and things that just make me cringe a bit.
Ed fucking Sheeran. I saw
Yes,
that one.
yes, that's everyone's favorite.
Yeah, that's
Ed
a good
Sheeran,
one.
Yeah. And then the glimmers are things written in pink, and those are things like weighted blankets and my nephew's laugh and stuff like that. Yeah, like. Yeah. And then something else is kind of all the other colors, everything that brings it together. So I kind of followed that visual language that I get from listening to my body, listening to the sort of reactions I get as a neurodivergent person, and letting that guide me. I think it's a strength, as you were asking, like it's a strength, and it's kind of hard to explain to other people sometimes, and that's where it becomes a quote unquote weakness, is like when I was in graduate school, I would often get the feedback of like, we don't know what this is trying to do, you're not good at talking about this work, and you need to work on your artist statement and things like that. And that was really, really disheartening for me, because it's like I was pouring myself out into this work, and I was speaking visually. I was speaking. It's just others couldn't understand it.
Yes. I can relate to that 100%. It's hard for me to verbalize my feelings sometimes. And one of the reasons I wanted to do this is to get better at speaking and having better conversations. Sometimes it takes a while for things to process. Like there's almost like a disconnect between my mind and my mouth. Yeah. So I've always been better at expressing myself through writing, fiction and poetry and colors. So with that, do you is there like is there a way that your art displays your feelings? Like how does your art display your feelings for you?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think what people see first is color, and that's definitely there. Color is always there. It's really important. I'm sure it is for basically every artist, but obviously for me too. But I think also texture. Texture is huge.
Yeah, you do have a lot of texture, a lot of different texture too.
Yeah. And it's like I had a peer back in grad school who talked about touching with the eyes, and so that is something I think about a lot.
Yeah.
Is even if we can't touch the work, which I have in the past allowed people to touch the work depending on what piece it is and how fragile it is, but the multi-sensory sort of experience is important. And I think that texture, going back to the question, is it's very raw. Like I want that rawness to be expressed through the work, because it's just the richest, in my opinion, for my work when it comes from that place.
Yeah, and that can be hard to verbalize sometimes, that rawness. Another thing that really impressed me was that you incorporate video and film. and you created this character, Miss Bubblegum. I want to hear more about Miss Bubblegum. What gave you that idea, and what was the process of creating Miss Bubblegum?
Oh man, yeah. As I said before, I went into graduate school with a film portfolio. Basically, I was doing film, but then towards the end of the 3 years, I went towards mixed media, and so I knew I needed film in my thesis. Like, I just knew I needed it, and so over the 3 years, I'd been introduced to more feminist filmmakers like Mika Rottenberg, Maya Deren, but Mika Rottenberg, especially, for those who don't know, she's like a social surrealist filmmaker where she does these short films that are kind of like reality, but not quite, and they comment on capitalism and labor and bodies, and especially gendered spaces and bodies, and she uses weird props and really weird circumstances, and I was just really like that, and so I knew I wanted it to be that sort of social surrealist space, because that's kind of what being neurodivergent feels like. That's kind of what feeling othered feels like, in a very homogenous space, or a very oppressive space. Is you're kind of having this weird experience where everyone's speaking a different language than you, or doing something different, or they have these expectations of you that you don't know where they're coming from or why. And so I was racking my brain, and so I just kind of sat down and wrote a short script, and it just, I think it came from this childlike place of reading a story to an audience, because it's almost like I feel like I have to dumb myself down a lot of the time for other people, I think. And I have to make my thoughts and feelings palatable in some way for others. And so I think that creating that sort of type of communication with the audience is what I was going for.
That's brilliant.
And so I don't know how to explain it, but the words just flowed. Like, it was a very short script. It was more like a treatment, to be honest. And I knew she had to be weird. She had to have I dyed my hair pink. I don't normally dye my hair. And I had press on nails and things like that. And yeah, that film got made in like 48 hours. It was, it was amazing. And so much of credit goes to my partner, Henry, because he's, I have professional film experience, but Henry has actually got a degree in it. And
shout out to Henry.
Yeah. And so, but it's so nice because I can just only focus on what I need to focus on, and he's doing camera, and he's doing the DPing, and it just looks phenomenal. But then I also got to do a lot of improvisation with the lines and stuff like that, and the breakdown, and so yeah, I hope that answers what you were asking.
Yeah, definitely. And you were talking about Henry. What is it like having a partner that's also creative? Do y'all feel each other? What's that like?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that, because it's it's something I think more people should know or talk about, because it's a complex experience.
Yeah.
When I was in graduate school, there were quite a few like power couples, like professor power couples, that could kind of get interesting. Like, honestly, it would be a little stressful, because you would be scared, like, okay, if I'm on bad terms with this professor, am I going to be on terms with their spouse? Like, honestly. And so I think Henry and I have always been like worried about that. Like, if I become a professor one day, or in some other position of power, and so does he. But he and I have had to really work on that in our relationship, where he's a very highly motivated individual overall. he's a lot more outgoing than me. And I have a lot of imposter syndrome. People talk about that a lot, but it's real. It's true.
Absolutely. I have imposter syndrome.
It's bad,
Yeah.
right? And so we've had to learn to walk the line of him really being my advocate and cheerleader while not feeling like he's trying to take it all over. And at the same time, I've had to learn to walk the line of letting him in and not shutting him out, you know, like, because he's incredibly helpful. Like like networking, I'm so bad at it. I'm so bad at it.
Me too.
I'm bad at it. I hate it.
Yeah.
Like, even how I got into Ugly was like, I probably wouldn't have done that without him, because I needed the courage to go into that gallery and talk to Anderson, you know, and Henry was there by me. And so it's definitely a push and a pull. And we haven't really collaborated right out on anything yet. It's more like, so far, one of us serves as like an assistant to the other, based on whatever project it is. And that's been working well so far, because we have so much less of an emotional attachment to the project, but can hold an objective view, while the other person is really in the weeds trying to get it done. But yeah, it's something that I think people should, if they're in a similar position or could be in a similar position, should think about, because not everyone can do that. You know, some people, they're going to put art first no matter what, or their career first no matter what, when it's
the art monster.
Yeah.
There's a book about that by Jenny Ophel. And it's about like two artists in a relationship, and art takes over the other person's life, and she calls it the art monster. Because art can be very consuming, especially when you get an idea and you get, like, I don't know about you, but I get very hyper focused on the idea, and it can take time to see a project through. And it took you a year to do your thesis, right?
Yeah, just about.
What was there anything going on in your life that kind of got in the way of that, or maybe enhanced it?
Yes, it was very, very difficult. The time in between my second year and my third year was one of the hardest years of my life. I almost left the program. I almost didn't finish. I had to change advisors. So that was a good thing that I did do it, but the fact that I had to do it was incredibly challenging, because I already felt like a fish out of water. But I got through it, and it does take a hell of a lot of discipline. Like, it's just like, you know, getting in the studio, staring at the wall for hours, like, of what you've done to figure out what it means. Like, and that does something. Like, that's work. It's not time wasted, that I've learned. Like, it's okay to do that.
Thinking, who would have thought?
Yes.
You know,
yes.
Like, I did this like habit building app in 2020, and one of the habits that it gave me was to sit for 30 minutes and just think, to not write anything down, not be distracted, to just think. And man, I got like ideas would just like pop. You know, it's like you have to give yourself that silence for things to rise up out of the well. And it's hard to do that when there's so many distractions. I feel like. You were talking about you almost quit. What brought you back to art? What made you want to be like, all right, I'm back in it?
Oh, I like that question. Other than the sheer of, I need to finish the degree, otherwise I'm going to be pissed at myself. other than that, once I got over that hump, it was community, honestly. Like, it was, things started to click when I started asking my peers for their opinions on the art, as opposed to just my professors or my professors and mentors. Like, asking my friends who are not artists but had similar identities to me, like, they got it. So I was like, oh, wait a second, this is what's happening, is I'm just not speaking their language. Like, I'm not speaking Professor so-and-so's language, who doesn't have nearly the same experiences as I do. But I am speaking my friend Tracy's language. Like, and I'm
Shout out to Tracy.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. She'd love this. And like these other friends I have, where I was like, oh, wait a second, I'm actually potentially starting a new conversation, or not starting a new conversation, but continuing one that is not as acknowledged by the greater fine arts world. That being of neurodivergence, I would say, is, I think, the biggest thread related to that.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Is there any other projects you're working on right now, or are there any new themes you're exploring?
I am trying to figure that out. To be honest, I'm still doing some of the similar work I'm doing, like the mixed media with the pink, because it can just keep flowing. But I have semblances of smaller things on the side to see what's going to happen. I would say right now they have a lot to do with more so the nostalgia side of growing up in the early 2000s in general. Things to do with like dreams that have to do with my childhood, and cartoons and kids pics and stuff like that.
Yeah. What draws you? What do you think draws you to connecting with your childhood? What about that like really makes you want to create something based around that?
I think because it's so complex, people's childhoods, like everyone's childhood is complex. And art is like one of the only things that can synthesize childhood, because it can adopt all of those nuances. And kind of like I said before, I think I make best when I'm doing it personally, which is something that's a double-edged sword, because it, then I'm opening up myself for criticism instead of the work only.
Scary.
Yeah.
Yeah, very
but
scary.
It's like, I don't know, detaching myself from the work, I don't know how people do it. It's just, like making a painting about, I don't know, the river, or I don't know, something that's so much more external. Like it just seems so difficult to me when I can, something as intimate as my childhood, I just know through and through,
Yeah. Childhood's definitely a big inspiration for my art. When I was getting back into visual arts, I would pretend that I was a 5-year-old. Like, I feel like when you're 5, that's your true self. That's my theory, at least, because that's before you're entered into the educational system. It's before you're, told what to do by peers, teachers, parents. And so just like reconnecting with little 5-year-old Zach, like I have pictures of him around the house, and just to honor him. And it's always a fount of inspiration, and it gets me back to childlike wonder, which I think is just magic.
Yeah, exactly.
Are there any other ways that you gain inspiration? Like, what do you consume, or what kind of habits do you do to, keep it going?
Man, I knew you were going to ask something along these lines. Yeah. I definitely go in waves, which is like why it's a tough question for me to answer. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm very much in a rut right now, not having a studio space anymore, being in my parents' house. I would say what I do is
I was trying not to laugh, so I'm glad you laughed.
I know.
Yeah.
What I often do is when I get an idea, I immediately write it down in my phone. And a lot of the times those ideas will come when I'm falling asleep. Mm-hmm. So I just have to wake up and write it down.
So annoying.
It is. But oftentimes it's the money idea. Like,
are you a notes app girly? Do you you have like folders with ideas and stuff like that in your notes app?
Pretty much. Yeah.
I live by my notes app.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's the main thing. And then I think also when I'm actually in the studio creating, gotta have a comfort show or podcast or music, and then some sort of nourishment of choice, usually tea or coffee or something.
Nice. I love that. I definitely have to have something going on when I'm painting, but when I'm writing, it has to be like completely silent.
Yeah.
It's interesting to how if I get too overstimulated while I'm writing, I can't think, but like I have to have something going on when I'm doing something with my hands.
Yeah.
I just love that. So last question.
Yeah.
If you had all the resources in the world, what would be your dream project?
Oh, man.
It's my favorite question to ask people.
Oh, I know. Yeah. I mean, making really cool short films. Like, I have this one film idea that I really want to make, and I think when we eventually move to LA, there's always just like so much filmmaking resources around. You trade labor is what I've been told a lot of the time. I'll help you with your film if you help me with mine, type of thing. And so I'm hoping when I get there, I have this one film script in mind that about queerness, about masking queerness and safe queer spaces versus not, things like that I really would really love to produce in film. So I think, being able to produce high quality films and not just like me struggling on the video camera by myself, that's the dream for sure.
Will Miss Bubblegum ever make an appearance again?
I hope so.
Me too.
Yeah.
I would love that. Maybe she can get her own podcast.
That's an idea.
Yeah. That would be fun. I would listen to that.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Emily, for coming. I can't wait to see what you do and see all your dreams come to fruition in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
I think you'll fit in perfectly there, and paint the town hot pink.
Yeah.
So thanks for coming on.
Yeah.